we cannot win this war by killing them. We cannot kill our way out of this war. We need, in the longer term, medium and longer term, to go after the root causes that leads people to join these groups, whether it's lack of opportunity for jobs.
We have been talking around this problem not only for weeks and months, but for years. How to cut the lifeline of terrorism. And in this case, let's say the words out loud. Radical Islamic terrorism. And as little else has worked, we are now caught in a concept of employment to cure radical empowerment. All right, let's dig in. No one understands this better than our guest. Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Florida Atlantic University's Department of Political Science, and also the author of Salafism in Lebanon, From Apoliticism to Transnational Jihadism. Professor Robert Rabil joins us here in the studio.
Ed, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Always a pleasure, my friend,
my
because
pleasure.
we actually get some real honest answers here when this comes down to
Thank
this.
you, Ed.
We hear now about this, and this all started within the last week. We need to do a better job employing people. That will save them from being caught in the web of jihadism. How foolish a statement is this?
This is part of it. So employment helps, but employment alone will not resolve the whole question that revolve around the ideology of Salafism. And as I mentioned to you, and thank you for bringing me back here again, Salafism or radical Islam, and let me say especially Salafi jihadism, it's an ideology that has been in progress for quite some time, and it congealed mainly in the 20th century. They hark back to the golden age of Islam. They want to create their own Islamic State, and they want to apply the prophetic model. They want to apply their own version of Islam. So this is really at the root of that. So if you want to fight them, you have to go ahead and debunk this ideology and debunk their version of Islam.
How do you debunk an ideology that from the moment they are born, in many countries, they are led to believe it, they are led to love it, eat it, sleep it, they are told that it's right to die, they're told that it's right to kill the infidels? How do you start
Well,
this?
as a matter of fact, you mentioned part of the answer in that you have the parents. They should play a role in telling them, listen, we are Muslims who really, we submit to Allah, we submit to Islam, and also we submit to peace. So this is one thing. You start with the family, which is at the nucleus of society. Second, and which is extremely important, every country in the Muslim world has a religious establishment. So that religious establishment has a duty, and its a duty, it's not only to bring them to pray, but it's a duty to tell them what's right and what's wrong and what's the peaceful version of Islam.
But that's not getting out there. You and I will absolutely agree on this, because I think you're right. We've talked many times in this country about what parents need to do in order to help create a better child, a better society. And it's not getting done here in America. But now we're talking about an ideology that has been so beaten into the heads of people for generations now, for centuries, that even if we start with the parents, let's say right now we start with one group of parents, that will take generations before we actually are able to get to the children and make them peaceful, won't it?
Well, I hope it's not going to take generations. I know it's going to take some time, probably 2 generations, but I hope it's not a generation. Why the parents, as I mentioned, they are not the only key actor. You have society at large is going to be an actor also in debunking this ideology. And the most important thing you have to say is this Salafi jihadism is terrorism, period. We are not at one with them. This is where they should start. They should not make any excuses. And this is how really it should be. And also, you should, something also that's happening, Ed, that's allowing people to go that route. You have certain religious movement that they consider themselves, and probably they are non-violent, but they are missionary movement to go ahead and recreate the caliphate. So they tell you, well, we are not radical, but the point is they are a missionary movement active throughout the Muslim world, including in Europe, in the Muslim community, telling them how to go ahead and recreate the caliphate. This militate against what? This undermine patriotism. Why? If you want to create the Islamic state or the caliphate, your loyalty is going to be to the caliphate. So what happened to your loyalty, to the loyalty of your country? So this is also another way to fight it. So my point is, you have to have a concerted effort, especially Muslims at the forefront, especially Muslim, and especially their religious leader, and then their political leader, then their curriculum in school, and then us. When we dialogue with them, we have to be open, we have to be sincere, but we have also to be blunt. What is wrong? Wrong. You call a spade a spade. If you have a controversial verse in the Quran, you don't overemphasize this, you underemphasize this.
Okay.
So this is how you go as a concerted effort.
Hang tight. I'm up against the clock. We're going to come right back, and when we do, we're going to deal with more of this on how to break the back of this fundamentalism and this radicalization when MidPoint continues.
Thank you.
Let's get back to work. Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida, Dr. Rabil joins us here in the studio.
Thank you, Ed.
The president seems to indicate that he does not want to use the words Islamic terrorism. He doesn't want to use those because he does not want to insult people of the Muslim faith here in America. He doesn't want to give the terrorist credence. Seriously now, are Muslims insulted when they hear that? If they hear the president talk about radical Islamic terrorists, do they then say, oh, look, you just brought my people into this and my religion now. Now I'm angry. Do they really get that upset by it?
Well, you know, based with my discussion with colleagues of mine and friends who are Muslims, and I grew up in Lebanon and I go there for research and different parts of the Middle East, yes, they are sensitive because they feel that if you want to attach or you want to append radicalism to Islam, somehow, you know, you are going to color Islam with radicalism.
Then the president's right in some ways.
Well, but this is where I come in and I chime in and I tell him, listen, but you have radical Muslims, so how you are going to call them? Violent extremism? No, because they are radical in the sense that they warp certain controversial verses in the Quran. They are right there in the hadith in the Quran, and their version of Islam is radical. So what you are going to call them? So my view is, if I don't call them radical Muslims, I'm not doing you a favor. I am doing you a favor by calling them radical Muslim, because this is exactly what they are, and you have a problem on your hand that you have to deal with. So this is my approach.
Let's talk about the approach from the community, because
Yes.
the president also made, I caught this and I found this to be a little controversial. It hasn't
Yes.
gotten a lot of hits yet, where he basically says that ISIS is winning in the propaganda war because Muslim community leaders in many ways are too boring. Too boring, that they're not really getting in the face of these young kids. Is that really something? I mean, if you had the Islamic leaders come out and say, and be really fiery in front of you to do something like that, would that make a difference?
Well, as a matter of fact, it makes some difference where you have religious leaders, community leaders coming out in the open and saying ISIS is a terrorist organization. What are you doing here? What you are doing, and if you are planning to support ISIS, you are not well guided. You are in the wrong. So yes, it helps. You know, you don't want all the imams, especially on the social media that you go, and they are all over that saying, well, listen, you know, the West is after us. We have to go fight alongside ISIS. It is through the Islamic Caliphate. So you have to have some things that counteract that.
But did he,
and this is what's so important.
Did he maybe not have to say too boring, maybe too scared? What about this? Because I know there are still many Muslim leaders who are scared to death about speaking out about radicalization because they are afraid that one nut job in their area is going to come after them and kill them.
Yeah. Well, here's the way I look at it at United States. You do have some people that speak out. You do have some people. Now, I would like to see them more louder. Now, regarding the semantics of the word boring or this, I would have preferred like you. Boring, I don't know, it doesn't sit well, and it didn't sit well with me, the word boring. Now, had he said something else, probably it had been more productive. And I am at one with you.
It sounds like he didn't want to insult anybody, so he used a soft, again, we're talking semantics in this entire speech, correct?
Yes, and especially like today, when, you know, or yesterday in the summit, the war against violent extremism, just say, call a spade, and also underscore at the same time, I am not at war with Islam, I am at war with radical Muslims.
And continue to say it over and
yes,
over and
exactly.
over again.
I am not at war with Islam, I'm with radical Muslim, and this is what we are with. We are at war because we cannot fool ourselves anymore. And this fight on extremism, now it's becoming too vague. It has to be sharp, it has to be focused. Are we fighting the Mexican cartel? These are violent extremists too. But they don't have the ideologies that ISIS has. They are not all over the place, you know, from Mauritania to Somalia to Chechnya to Syria. You know, and this is the point. It has to be sharp. It has to be focused.
Okay, so 1 minute left then. If we're going to call a spade, as you said here, let's get the president to stand up and say, this is not necessarily America. This is Europe. The multiculturalism of Europe and the way that they have fostered this. It is Europe that basically bred this, started it, and they still keep it going to this day. You, the European governments, you're the ones that got to get really off your seat here and get to work.
And I will go further and I will say, listen, why don't you go ahead and act on what Chancellor Merkel one time said, multiculturalism has failed. The way now for you and our community is to be assimilated. Well, they are dragging their feet. You know, like in Copenhagen, they are dragging their feet.
Well, it's too deep already. There's too much multiculturalism there. They can't change
But
it, right?
they know that already. They know multiculturalism has failed in France and everywhere, in Great Britain, in Germany, in Denmark. They know that. Now they have to be active. And really that sensitivity. Sometimes I feel, you know, if you want to use certain words, it's better than being nice. You have to be really sometimes blunt and sincere. Blunt and sincere. I have no problem with Islam. I have a problem with the Muhammad Atas and with the Baghdadi of the world. I have no problem with Islam.
Learn a lot more about this issue. The book is called Salafism in Lebanon, From Apoliticism to Transnational Jihadism. It's a fascinating book. It'll teach you a lot about what we talk about right here.
Ed, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, my friend, to get some real language. It's awesome.
Thank you.
The dangers of another superbug and the medical dangers of those coming to America from Cuba. That and much more when we continue right here on MidPoint.